I'd like to start by talking about something that I know is of great import and interest to my constituents, and I know many constituents, and that's the implementation of Real ID as we're kind of coming down to the wire. The governor proposed a little over $25 million appropriation for Real ID in 2021 to comply with the federal Homeland Security requirements. I remember being on the House State Government Committee when we developed the legislation to implement Real ID here in Pennsylvania. Just a few questions. The first, do we anticipate as the time gets closer that we're going to have more requests? Are we going to need more staff? Do we have the staff complement that will be in place, or we feel comfortable at the department to be able to handle kind of the influx of what we feel will be a kind of a mad dash to make sure everybody's in compliance by October?
Good morning. Thank you for that question. And yes, as we get closer, there is going to be more demand for Real ID. As a matter of fact, last weekend on Friday, we had 24,000 folks actually going to our driver's vehicle centers, and of those 24,000, 6,000 people applied for Real ID. So, and on Saturday, we had 20,000 folks going to our DVS centers, and we're still waiting to get the numbers on that. But we're definitely seeing an increase of the population applying for Real ID. We are ready to respond to the needs. We're actually looking into adding more hours to the centers, adding more staff. We hired an additional 265 people to address the need of the Real ID. Again, as I mentioned, we're looking into adding hours, maybe looking into opening on Mondays. Some of the centers we are actually, that used to be open like 3 days a week, we've actually added more people over there to keep it open 5 days a week. So we're definitely putting a plan together to address the need of Real ID.
And that is very comforting to myself. I'm sure all of our district staff as well that deal with all of those requests. We do think that there will be that influx. I'm happy to hear that the department is preparing for that. The other thing, you know, this is our appropriations hearings, and we talk about budgeting. And I remember at the time that we developed the legislation, the intent of the House, and I believe the legislature as a whole, was that this would be somewhat of a user fee. If you wanted it, you would be able to, you would pay for it and you would have it. But I don't think this program has really paid for itself, has it? I mean, don't we see money from the department having to go to this taxpayer dollars, go to the program? And how did that happen, and is that the way you see it?
So you mentioned users fee. It's for the folks who want to opt into getting Real ID. If you don't want Real ID, you don't have to pay anything extra. If you want Real ID, there is a one-time fee of $30, right? And
right, but is that $30 really covering the cost? Is my question. It doesn't.
It's actually 50% of the cost, if not less.
Right.
So it's really not covering the cost for Real ID. And that's a decision that was made when we actually were looking into how we wanted to plan out the financial side of the Real ID a couple years ago. Some states have a higher number. They collect higher numbers from the people who apply for Real ID. Some states go lower. It's purely up to the states. We didn't get any federal mandate on how much we should be charging for Real ID.
And I understand that, and again, that's kind of, I felt like the intent as we put that legislation together was that those who did not want Real ID or did not need Real ID would not have to pay for it. However, to a certain degree, they will, because the folks are only paying for 50% of what it costs to obtain it. So I thought that was correct, just wanted to make sure, and that ends my questioning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.